fa ojongom na yentu abasa gomu gomu akona ba jebe mi ha yen fa ojongom na yentu abasa gomu se konkom na wa ya dia se konkom adia sana wonkoda makoso monkari anso odonti yes na ya body and a dream se konkom na wa ya dia se konkom adia sana wonkoda makoso monkari anso odonti yes na ya body and a dream so top say yo my rapid on joy away me no back road to top say yo my rapid on joy away me no back road I can't know about you baby ha you can't come from side down and your ma your joy is so sad I done some pussy all night.
Oh. Good evening, everybody. I didn't realize we were on. In fact, we tried to get on earlier, but my buddy David Price had all kinds of audio problems, so we're trying to work through those things tonight. So hopefully things will be okay. In any case, I was reading through Parting with Illusions. No, this isn't, a tale.
You have the book upside down. You know that, right?
I know that. Okay.
You do.
Okay.
Jesus.
Oh, for Christ's sake. Where's this mirror thing here? Camera options here. Okay, hold on.
You are like...
Okay, there we go. Parting with Illusions. Well, that's what I wanted to start off with tonight, folks. At least an hour ago, I had planned on doing that. Don't mind the voice behind the screen there, okay? Parting with Illusions. Well, just a week ago, we had the feeling, of course, that everything was working our way. And it still is, seemingly. But if you looked on our page, which is now, by the way, Divided We Stand private group instead of a public group, you wouldn't know it. Because, quite frankly, everybody's scared shitless. And for good reason. We see also a Trump rally today. I watched Bill Maher last night, and Bill echoed basically what I've been saying. He said, look at what Trump does. Just look at him. Don't listen to him. Look at him, what he does. And that's the bottom line. And he still says, I don't see him abdicating. You know what I mean? So it's a very frightening time, but it's not only that. You can see the anxiety starting to go up just from our private page now. And, we need each other. But we also must allay our fears and try to overcome this, because now it's becoming an issue just trying to get through these 2 months, which my friend David Price has, talked about. He has always said, our most difficult time will be between November and January. So I'm going to bring on the guy who has nothing better to do on Saturday nights. Whatever he tells you about the audio, it's his fault, okay? So I'm just going to tell you that right off the top. It was all his fault, and that's why we're an hour late. But I'm not mad at him.
No, that's
I'm not mad at him. But quite frankly, we don't know what's wrong. We're trying to figure it out. You notice I'm not even using my earbuds today because whatever's happening now is working. So we're...
That was a good segue.
Yeah. Yeah. Hold on. I want to, you know what? I don't know why this. Okay, I know what's going on here. Let me go back.
I can say two.
There you go. Now we got you.
Say 2 words. Listen, I obviously I'm gonna have a different beginning. We apologize. We try to be. We're only an hour and 8 minutes late. I mean, hell, that's pretty good for DC time. So I got a little different intro, Brian. You never know what I'm going to say. I mean, we don't.
No, I have no idea what you're going to say.
No. Well, what I want to explain to everybody, basically, is what doing this show is like with Brian. A few years ago, we were very fortunate. My wife's dream was to go on safari to Africa, and we were able to do that. And we spent 10 days, in Kenya. And even though they don't have any chimpanzees native to Kenya, because Jane Goodall, is kind of the chimpanzee savior queen, she set up her chimp rescue in Kenya. So they get them from other places and bring them there. And this one, his name wasn't Brian, but it reminded me of Brian. All he did was sit there and throw his own feces at people. So working with Brian, I've actually, I've kind of reached my end. So I put in a call. The monkey and I had the chimpanzee and I had a long discussion. As soon as he can get a flight to the States, it'll be a while. We're going to replace Brian with the feces throwing chimpanzee. And what I do know is it will be better. Hey, Brian, what's up?
Dave, it's good to see you. And we have to admit, we work like hell to get on here. So I know.
No. Look, we each pick on each other. But here's the thing, ladies and gentlemen. Brian is very, very good at what he does for being a feces throwing chimpanzee. And no, but seriously, if you could imagine a system that relies on everything going wrong, and some of you are not.
And a new update, by the way, with Mac. We both had to go through the. I think that's the problem.
That's another thing. You work and they say, do this update. It sounds really good. And then all of a sudden things that worked before are not compatible, not necessarily with the Mac, but with other things. And we both like this program called Ecamm. I would recommend it to anybody who's thinking of doing anything online. You bypass some things, but I guess, and not excusing what we had tonight, but it's also the technology. Look at MSNBC, look at CNN. I mean, they have multi $1 million worth of equipment, and they have problems in this pandemic because you're not doing it the way you normally do it. But we're not here to make apologies tonight. We're here to talk, as we always do. And I think Brian said it very, very well. Election night, some uncertainty, and everybody's a little worried, and this whole thing, and and then all of a sudden, by Thursday, it begins to look pretty good, right? And then we have this explosion on Saturday, right? A week ago, right, Brian? Mm-hmm. That when 11 o'clock? 11 a.m. And everybody's celebrating. And then we're almost worse than we were there. Let's talk about what's good. Okay, we'll start with what's good. Brian, audio needs adjustment. Maybe not too close to the mic.
All right,
he's just terrible.
I'm red line here. Let me bring this down.
Yeah.
Well, if that works, tell me in the chat, because
I hope you don't mind. I just like HLS. I just think that's a human love solidarity. I'll call you that.
Yeah, we always call them human. So it's just
I like. It's like the
HLS. Okay, that's easy.
RGB. So if you don't mind, human, if you say you don't like it, I will change. Thank you. So basically, again. And what I like, I'll segue a little bit while you're fixing yourself. I really like the show in this sense because we're just learning, we're neophytes, but we have a lot of good people out there, and they tell us, I'm just saying, I mean, that's great. Please tell us, if there's an audio problem, a video problem, because, again, this is all kind of brand new technology, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm going to talk, Brian, just briefly about good. And then I have 4 things tonight that are going to scare your pants right off of you.
All right.
But let's start.
Well, first of all, Dave, I want to just ask you quickly, because,
Sure.
You use some very good sense not going down to the rally down in Washington.
I'll talk about that.
Right. It's just that I wanted to know. I mean, from what I saw, it didn't look like there were. I mean, first of all, there wasn't 1 million people there. I would guess I saw 15,000 people there. Yes.
Certainly not more than 20.
All right. That's about what I saw.
Yeah.
But okay, so you'll explain it later. I just want to know if there were any problems down there. I mean, you were at least close enough that you could hear about it from other people and all that.
Yeah. I'll just tell you, I mean, again, like, sources. I mean, whatever, but I've been down there enough that and have a couple cell numbers that I can call when I say our people. For some strange reason, the Proud Boys, and every time I say that now, I'm going to say the Proud Boys. I have no idea what they have to be proud of. But anyway, I don't know them, but I have a couple, and they did kind of. I just said, can you check in when I wasn't going? And they said it went relatively smoothly. Okay, there was a lot of fear, and the thing, it's interesting. Well, I might as well talk here about it since you asked the question. All right, so as you know, I keep repeating myself because you never know when you're going to get a new person in. My wife and I live in Crystal City. We are literally, I mean, it's 3 metro stops from DC. We're 4.6 miles from the White House. And we have a young, everybody's young to me, but no, we have a young black couple. He's just finishing law school. He's interning. And as we were going out across to get something, he and his wife came in, and we stopped. They had not gone, Brian, they weren't going to the rally, but they had gone to a restaurant for brunch with some friends called Founding Farmers. Now, Founding Farmers is on Pennsylvania Avenue, which of course puts it near the White House, but not indirect. I mean, you could get there and go away without going to the White House, and that's what they were going to do. And so they're driving. Now, the big thing today for anybody who watches it later, you'll hear these terms: White House and Freedom Plaza. The idea of Freedom Plaza was that's where the protest, and today's protest was courtesy of pro-Trump people. That's where the protest was scheduled. Of course, some would go up to the White House because that's very close to the White House. And then they would march down Pennsylvania Avenue to the Capitol, which is one of the traditional protest march ways. And that's what you saw on TV, many of you. So again, for those who aren't familiar, another section of DC is relatively small, is called Chinatown Gallery Place. And if DC had a downtown, that's where it would be. They don't. It's one of the major metro stops, a hub. It's people there. And so, and I'm, my lawyer friend and his wife, trying to avoid the trouble, said they would go that way and out, right? It made sense. Unfortunately, Chinatown was overrun with Trump protesters because their protest was over, right? And that happens all the time, just hang in the city. And my friend said they were taking pictures of his car, tried to intimidate him. He saw this woman carrying a flag, and he's not quite either. He's like me. He said, "I love your flag." And she said, basically, "You know what you can do with my flag, you." And so while there was no violence, of course, there was the intent. As far as I can tell, asking some people that I know, the Rowdy Boys were there. No, the Proud Boys, I keep calling the Rowdy Boys. And indeed, what they did, which is interesting, Brian, they kept circling the crowd, almost like they were protecting it, their people. But as far as we know, we'll know more tonight, but there were no confrontations. Now, you can't take one incident and say this proves everything. But there was a weekend reporter I just happened to catch, and she was assigned to cover the march, and she was trying to be serious about it. She's young and trying to get in the business. So she said she saw this protester with a sign that said, "Media lies, tell truth, Trump won." Okay. So what is that guy? So she goes up to him and engages in a conversation and basically said, "Well, you lie when you report the votes." And, she was trying to be logical. She said, "Well, we don't report the votes. We don't make them. We don't count them." Or no, I'm sorry. He said, you lie when you count the votes. So first of all, he thought the media counted votes, or he just spoke, whatever. And she said, "No, sir. We get a report, and we think it's true, and we tell you." And he said, "Well, it's not right. That Trump won Georgia." I mean, he was dead serious, right? Trump won Georgia. And she said, "Well, you're blaming the media for that, but the media is reporting that Trump won North Carolina. So, her implication is, wait a minute." And he looked at her deadly seriously and says, "No, that's different. Trump did win North Carolina." So they being the them and then the us, or they being Trump supporters, there's no sense in even talking to them. I mean,
no, there's no sense whatsoever.
There's just not any sense of getting it. Now, I just want to say, a lot of people, again, thank you to the community. A lot of people even said on the page and a few others, I was going down for three reasons to the thing. First of all, I was a reporter, and man, it's hard when something's going on not to go. And it's the biggest, one of the biggest stories in the country, right? And I didn't go down, and certainly the pandemic is raging, but I didn't go down at all from March until about 2 months ago. And when I'm down there, I have mask. I'm around. I only go to our protests, if you will. I knew today they wouldn't be masked, but I've been down there one time inadvertently and had 20,000 of them unmasked. And I stayed on the periphery. That's what I planned to do. The second thing is, I admit I'm an excitement junkie. I wanted to be there. But the third is the most important thing for me. Divorce me from a writer. Divorce me from this program. You can't let these people win. You can't. You can't. So I'm thinking to myself, well, I'll make the stand. Well, so what happened last night? Two things happened to change my mind. I was planning to go. My wife said, okay, all set to go. Yeah, true. HLS, you're exactly right. Religion and Trump, it's the same thing in terms of how people respond. But last night here in Crystal City, I was having dinner around 7, and I get a text on my phone, and Virginia, the state in which I went in, the governor made 4 decisions yesterday based on the rise here, not in where we live. We're actually okay, but in the South, the more rural area. First of all, he said, or not in this particular order, but he said all bars in the state of Virginia beginning Sunday, Monday morning, must stop serving alcohol at 10 o'clock, and all restaurants and bars must close at midnight. The reason being that the studies are coming back and saying large crowds indoors, etc., outdoors.
Right.
Another thing he did, which I thought was very interesting, the law for masks here in Virginia had been anyone over the age of 10 must wear a mask. It's over the age of 5. All right. So if you're under 5, you don't wear a mask, and 10. Another thing is the law in Virginia as of before this announcement was you could have crowds of 250 people in a party, in a bar, in whatever. And that was reduced last night to 25. Now you can imagine, a bar can't exist with 25 people. A restaurant can't exist necessarily with 25 people, but we have to go back into it. And then the fourth was minor, but it's even more major. They increased the fines and penalties for not wearing a mask. And they even stiffened them more if you're seen in a grocery store or a pharmacy without one, right? Mm-hmm. So that was the first thing. And then my son, he sent me a message, and it really struck me. I really didn't think of this, kids. He said, basically, Michael can curse at me, and we have that agreement when I'm in. He was just trying to make a point. He says, "You, Dad, you're being a goddamn idiot. What's going to happen? You're going to get the virus. We can't get there for you. But if we could get there for you, we can't get back in. And you're being very selfish, doing this thing and not thinking about Audrey and Owen." So I said, okay. I said, I'll leave it up to Audrey. She's my granddaughter. She turns 13. And Audrey, I would say this. I would put her up intellectually, Brian, against just about all of those 20,000 people today, and she'd wipe the clock with them. She's very bright for 13, but that's not it. And she said, "Grandpa, you can't go." So that's why I didn't go. So I didn't, and it was the right thing to do. Now, what I projected would happen did happen. Them did what I consider to be one of the stupidest moves politically or protest wise. Again, I've been involved in a number of protests as orders. You always say less people are going to attend. You always say that. We're going to have 10. Imagine this, Brian. I'm being stupid. Say you say, I think we'll get 100 protesters, and 100,000 show up. Media's, oh wow. But the MAGA people, the MAGA March, they actually use this term biting, as the kids say, or ripping off the Black Million Man March. They said the Million MAGA March. Now, you saw the crowd. That was nowhere near 1 million people. So automatically, they've set themselves up, for that kind of defeat. One more thing, though. So I did get a confrontation, Brian. I haven't told anyone this except Jude. So you don't have to go to a rally to get this. Today, I have a number of anti-Trump masks. So hanging out so much, Brian, down there. One time I had this really pretty cool anti-Trump mask. And somebody said, look, I really want that mask. I'll trade you. He didn't have it on, but he said, I'll trade you a Black Lives Matter mask for that mask. And I said, yeah, that's cool, right? And it was still in the bag. I said, I hadn't worn it yet. So I wore it today just for something kind of, when I go out, I try to wear politics or make a statement. And so we're over at our local CVS, which is across the way. Judy was inside, and I wanted to check. I wanted to see if I had any messages, from anybody. And I'm standing out there, and I hear this voice. Now, I'm not going to get it exact, Brian, but it's pretty close. Hi, there ain't nothing more gay than a white boy wearing a Black Lives Matter mask. And I said, I looked up, and there's a gentleman, a little bit younger than me, obviously, for the story, white. And I said, pardon me, I didn't hear you. He said, you heard me. I said, there ain't nothing more gay than a white boy wearing a Black Lives Matter mask. Well, I really did want to respond to that. So I looked at him. I said, sir, I would respectfully disagree with you. I've seen many things more gay than that, and I'm looking at one now.
Good for you.
Well, of course. Now, he turns around and says, you being smart? I said, yeah, kinda, I guess. I try to value on being smart. How about you? What you mean? I said, hey, we're still distance. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm not even thinking he's going to rush me or anything. Whatever. And finally said, you know what? I said, pardon me, I can't hear you. He said, you can hear me. I said, I can't hear you. And he just started walking away. And I just said nicely, I said, I can't hear you. Are you saying anything? I can't hear you. Now, that could have gone the way it did, which is the way that I normally think that bullies work. If you confront them, they usually turn. They want to use their intimidation. And of course, the other thing is you could be talking to a corpse tonight, right?
Right.
And I think that's the fear. Okay. And that's what bothers me with the maggots. They're not brave. Now, one thing again, people said, they got guns. Well, here's DC's gun law. I know their gun laws. In DC, you can carry a weapon if you have a permit, but it must be concealed, right? That's number one. And number two, no weapon that you carry can hold at any one time more than 10 bullets. So that takes the AK-47s and all that out, right? So today, had I gone down there, if any person had produced something like that, they would have been arrested, whether it was whoever it was. So I wasn't worried about that. It's pretty hard to conceal a rifle, a shotgun in your pants, right? I guess you could use a Columbine coat, but it's just not something you would necessarily want to do. So but again, I was thinking about this. The place to be scared is not Washington, D.C. It's not. The places to be scared are the places where there are open carry all weapons, right? Open carry all weapons. And that would be Michigan. It's a number of states, right? We've already seen it on TV.
And have another Kyle Rittenhouse. That's all you need is one.
Well, yeah. But
like
the difference is, I'm not saying you couldn't have a Kyle Rittenhouse in Washington, D.C., but it would be much harder.
Right. As soon as he's visible, the people point out, get that motherfucker off.
And Virginia, here we don't have it. But again, I want to thank the community, so many of them. It was kind of touching, and I almost felt bad going in for them. And so I'm kind of glad I didn't. A few of them got back to me and said, I made a choice. I'm comfortable with that choice. But my stand, I still got to make my stand today. Think about this. We're so goddamn divided right now. I didn't have to make my stand at the White House. I'm 4.6 miles from 20,000 people I don't agree with protesting, right? I made my stand at the local CVS. I'm not saying my stand. I got into a confrontation So that just shows how deep we're in. And ladies and gentlemen, two things are not going away anytime soon. The coronavirus, yet I'm much more optimistic with Joe Biden coming in and hearing the reports that people are saying, whom I believe, Dr. Fauci and others. He said, if things go as well as they appear to be, that we could be looking for some release in the summer of 2021, which would be miraculous.
And on those lines, Dave, I hope I can show you this, because I think this is noteworthy. Okay.
Yeah.
So I will be showing you this.
Okay.
This is Governor.
There you are. I saw
Doug
that today.
Burgum. Now, we know that, first of all, North Dakota is a very small, big state geographically, but in terms of people, it's small. But it's extremely, extremely conservative. But this state, it is out of control there, because they obviously don't have enough health workers, and they're trying to force them back in. And here you have a conservative-ass governor, and he feels the pressure now because he's mandating they have to wear masks unless you're outside and there's some kind of distance. Other than that, you've got to wear the mask, because he knows that the system can't handle it there. And this is exactly the warning that they told these conservatives all across the country, that when it gets to you guys and you have these hospitals that are so far apart, and you're not going to have the ability to treat these people because they're going to come flooding in. Now, of course, they don't have the number of cases that New York City had. They don't have to. If you only have 5 hospitals and you've got 3,000 people, you're screwed, and you're going to have more deaths. Excuse me. So
now, one of the things, I struggle with the same things other people do, in terms of things. But, and I've been listening quite a bit to try to figure out what to me didn't seem quite right. All right. When we had the initial outburst or outbreaks in the city, deaths were up. Now the numbers are greater and deaths are down. That's not any kind of play or anything. What's happened is we being the medical people, have learned how to treat this better. That's number one. Number two, initially it was hitting the older people harder. It still does, but the nursing homes. And now, some places, we're getting better at the nursing homes. So I guess what I'm trying to say, and I'm not saying it very well, it's not that the virus is easing up. It's that medical treatment, the things we know about the virus are kicking in. Now, there's still, though, as was pointed out all week, these numbers are growing. And we just had this tremendous week, of 7 days in a row, breaking records. I wouldn't be surprised if right by December, before we even get to Christmas, we'll be running 200,000 people a day.
Right.
When Thanksgiving kicks in. Well, the other thing that nobody really talks about, because we don't know, it's not just dying with the coronavirus. It's coming out and having pulmonary problems, breathing problems for the rest of your life.
But Dave, isn't even more so just the general idea of what you saw today in Washington, that these idiots, and I don't know how else to put it, they're stupid people,
Brian. There's no other word.
And they are the ones causing the problem, and they're going to want to be treated, and this is causing just an incredible amount of problems in North Dakota. And these people, because of their stupidity, they're making it so difficult, especially for the medical workers, the nurses especially, and the doctors, because they're the ones that are going to get sick, and they're being forced to go in.
Now, anybody out there, correct me if I'm wrong, or Brian, I'm fairly certain it's North Dakota. It was either South Dakota or North Dakota, but I think it was North Dakota, where they issued, prior to this, they're hit so badly that they said to nurses and doctors, if you have COVID, come on in and work anyway. We'll just have you work. We'll just have you work around people that already have COVID. You know what I mean? So it's not like they're not going to send you in to work on somebody with a heart attack, right? You become a COVID specialist. Well, okay. Now back to your idiots there that you described.
And by the way, there's $1,000 fines, and this is a Republican governor in a conservative state.
Well,
this two-faced son of a bitch.
Well. Yeah. Well, the broad thing is this. Two things that I see in America and the world. One is that while we say we're one country, we're 50 independent states. And some people think that's good, and some people think it's bad, and sometimes it is good. I'll give you an example when it's good. It was very good. Could you imagine if Donald Trump had control of all the voting apparatus in the country?
Oh my God.
Okay. So this time it was very, very good. It's very, very bad in the idea of a virus that doesn't discriminate. It just took longer to get certain places, right? Now, I'm comparing everything to Australia simply because that's where my grandchildren are. And they have the same setup. They have states. But again, one of the things that they do is the states can also have their own lockdowns, and nobody can get in and nobody can get out. So it would be the equivalent of DC currently asked people from I think it's up to now, I think it's 41 states. If they come into DC, right? They asked to quarantine. Well, that's not going to happen. Not without some kind of force. Now, here's the other thing. I understand why. I could have it and go in and not have to quarantine because they had to exempt Maryland and Virginia, right? Because really we're one we're more, we're like Connecticut, North Jersey, and New York, right? I mean, we're one unit. So with three very differing kinds of things. So, the virus, let's just say this, we could talk all night about it. Again, it's just speculation based on science. Couple comments on the virus. Number one, it's only going to get worse until Joe Biden gets in. That's it. Done. Donald Trump is not going to do a thing about it. He's going to make it worse in this respect. I fully expect him as soon, which would be pretty soon, as soon as the votes are legal and certified, he will begin a campaign for 2024 tour now. And he will go out to these people. He needs the adulation. He needs the warmth coming in from his people.
Or worse than that, he still may try some more things along the way.
Well,
after it's certified.
One at a time, Brian, one at a time. Okay. So I'm just talking about him going out. Well, what's wrong with that? Every place he has been, because of the crowd size and the lack of people wearing masks, whether it's the White House, Omaha, it doesn't matter where it is. The virus is following or with him as surely as it was with the 250,000 bikers in Sturgis, who they now have,
which may have affected North Dakota too.
Well, yeah, exactly. So that's going to happen. So we forget him. The virus, we have to take it. All the news that you're pretty much hearing about the vaccine is much better than I expected. And the reason is, my understanding, and I checked this out, I think I'm pretty correct. The fastest we've ever gotten a vaccine for something this serious was polio, and it took almost 10 years. And we're going to do this possibly in a year. But again, science has improved and all that. Now, but everybody has, just when they get it out, there's still a transmittal problem, who gets it, who doesn't get it. Now, the thing that I don't understand, and I've got to do more looking into it. I mean, I got it kind of, but not. Okay. And maybe you know this, Brian. Okay. I'm going to say this, probably, if everything being the case it is, about half the country will take it if it comes from Joe Biden, the other half won't, right? Same half that doesn't wear masks.
Right.
So if we get that, does that mean, does that mean we can't get, it's a vaccine is so you can't get it, but it's still, the idea of it is that everybody's kind of got it. You know what I mean? Like, and so we're going to.
Or if you're Trump, obviously he'll be gone by then, but he'll try to keep it away from the Democratic states.
But I'm saying everything that you hear on that is pretty good. Now, let's look at the first thing that Joe Biden did before he even appointed his chief of staff, which, by the way, is a phenomenal pick. Everybody says that man is the best choice for the job. But his first thing was to put together two commissions of science, of real scientists, and work on the virus. So we have to put our faith in Joe and the science and all the things that didn't happen before. How does Donald Trump turn it around? You've heard him this week. He is actually saying, I told you there would be a vaccine, and I told you they would hold off. And these companies working with Joe Biden held off until after the election because they knew that I would lose. Whoa. Slow down, Donald. He's getting trapped up in his own words. You see what I'm saying? I mean, there's actually 3 times this week where he went almost on like I'm losing. You know what I mean? Because he's complaining about something that he doesn't acknowledge. But the virus, so here's what we all have to do: wear masks, socially distance, don't do anything stupid. Now, look, a lot of us are very, very close to our families, right? It is very hard. I've talked to numerous people. I'm not alone. Everybody's talking. They haven't seen their grandchildren since March, right? The ones that are taking this seriously. And now Thanksgiving is coming. And a number of these people are on our page. They weren't talking on our page, but friends that I know, they were just, I don't know what to do. I could make it, but Thanksgiving, I can even survive that. But if I can't have my family with me on Christmas, they're going to do it, right? I mean, they're not going to break in. My own family, on Judy's side, there were people talking about this. What would have been about 20 people Christmas, and thank goodness the two people's houses that would be held put a kibosh on it. But these are not bad, But everybody's, do I do it? Do I not? So my point is, there's going to be a lot of pressure, and it's going to go up. Even some good people are going to give into that, right? So I think the virus, as a political issue, Trump will continue to use it. Biden will just say, kind of do what he does. From what I've read and from what he said, all he said is, please keep. Now imagine Trump saying this. He pretty much said to scientists, please go find it. Keep me informed. That's all he has. He didn't say, I want to say that. I don't want to take anything about it. You're right, HLS, of course.
The problem is that these right wingers, and for the most part, they can't do any of those things. They don't wash their hands. They don't wear the mask. They don't stay 6 feet away.
But basically, I mean, okay, Brian, you would be much better example of this. You live in really, and I've lived there, so I know what I'm talking about. You live in a almost predominantly, if you take the townships around the city, almost a predominantly Trump designed area, and that proves that Jeff Van Drew won. And I mean, there's good people on both sides. No, there's not. What I mean is, there's Republicans, Trump publicans, and Democrats, but it's there. But really, outside of work, right, Brian? I mean, you are working. If you want to talk later about school, it's a little different, but that's not it. But you're working. But outside of that, do you really have to, living in this area, do you really have to have that much contact with Trump publicans? I mean, you would in the grocery store, right? You would in the pharmacy, and you would at work.
Right. Where I see them, Dave, for example, you're right. The grocery stores, and by the way, for the most part, at the grocery store that you and I, the grocery store you went to, one that I go to, most of the Trumpers generally don't go there. It's more for the city folks. So, and quite frankly, the kids, for the most part, and for the town of Bridgeton, the city of Bridgeton, I should say, which is mainly Latin American and African American, they wear their masks.
Yeah.
But when you start going to the edges, the perimeter of the city, the diners, which you're familiar with,
right?
That's when you see the guys, with the baseball caps,
the hats, right?
And they're like me, they're overweight, but they don't shave and this and that,
right?
And you know what they are, and those are your terms. Now I have only seen those types, and that's as far as I go. I mean, I can see people, as I drive along, and I might see them in town or something like that.
Right.
In the main, I guess what I'm saying, Dave, to answer your question is, no, I don't have to see these people.
Right. They're there. They're aware.
Except for my neighbors. You have a few of those.
Well, I'm saying you can't avoid them in that area.
You can't.
We really, where I live, we really don't have them. I mean,
and you keep small talk with them. Like, how you doing?
So what I'm not trying to dismiss the virus. What I'm saying is, we talk political and we talk division.
I think I'm getting it again.
Two kinds of people, right? Those that wear masks and those that don't. That's a division, correct? I would love to see a doctoral dissertation or somebody really equipped. And I guarantee you that at least, I wouldn't be 100% correlation between not wearing a mask and supporting Donald Trump, but it would probably be in the 90s. You know what I mean? Somewhere around 90% or more of the people would be in both camps.
It's quite obvious. I mean,
yeah, they're
which is why I think it's going to be difficult for. I can't see a state like North Dakota enforcing that $1,000 fine.
I agree, but here's the thing, Brian, and again,
Republicans enforcing it upon Republicans, because that's what you really want.
well, and also, Trump isn't going to back anything, right? But
He's so
Biden,
detached. He's only worried about one thing right now.
we know that. We know that. But what I'm saying with Biden, who is going to actively try to get this down, he would support the governor's action, even though he probably got 4 votes in North Dakota, right? I mean, you see that again. Trump has already said, but of course his supporters cheered it today.
Not necessarily.
He has already said that New York will not get any vaccine unless they kiss his boot.
By the way, someone just asked, Human, normally I would be concerned. I was outside today for 3 hours blowing leaves, and every time I do that, I get this. So
yes, and you did it the
thank
other night
you for the concern.
show.
But now I'm not saying it isn't COVID, because my school shut down on Friday, and we're out for at least 2 weeks. And some people, and it's because people had it, not because the governor decided. It's because too many teachers and staff, whatever, getting it. And I'm biting the bullet.
Brian, I'd like to try and experiment now, or not experiment. Listen, you have spoken eloquently of the group that has genuine concerns, right? So we've dealt with the coronavirus, we haven't eliminated. But speaking of not just you're speaking for broad America. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'm saying let's throw some things out with you asking, well, I'm concerned about lawyer the coup. So let's start with one.
First of all, that's something that Ronnie brought up today. She was watching MSNBC, and she was irate because we like MSNBC in general, but the discussion started coming around. I think it was Joy Reid and a few others that they're contemplating, would Joe Biden, to try to make concessions to the Republicans, pardon Trump? I mean, that to me is the dumbest thing. I
want to deal with that separately. Okay. I mean, we're going to deal with
we'll get, as long as we hit that tonight, we will. Because that infuriated me too. My wife was beside herself.
Speaking for you and others, right now in this January period, coming up, what maybe pick the 3 concerns that you're worried about, and I'll pick the one for you because we've talked about it before. Legal matters. It is over, Brian. If anybody's worried, it is over. There is no legal way for him.
Right. Well,
no, there is.
Again, I'm always going to go by what happened last night on Mars show. You had this constitutional lawyer, this real bitch. I mean, she was slick.
Was she a Trumper, or was she a Trumpublican?
She actually was not technically working for Trump, but she worked as a constitutional lawyer for the Republican Party.
Now, how old was she, just out of point of curiosity?
I'd say she was no more than 35 years of age.
And I don't want to dismiss you, so that's still a concern for people. Now, if his last name escapes me for a moment, but he would be the most intelligent Republican attorney in Washington, D.C.
Turley?
And he was the one
who
ran the defense, ran the appeal for George Bush and won it, right? So he knows more, than just about anybody else.
Who's this?
This attorney, I can't remember his name.
Are you sure it's not Jonathan Turley? Because he's the one that was always.
No, it's not Jonathan Turley. It's not somebody who normally comments. Anyway, what he said was basically, it's over. He said, I'd be the first one. I mean, he wasn't saying this. I know what it takes to win on that side. And I'm not saying I know it all, but Trump believes, and then Trump's people believe, and then Trump's sycophants follow through this theory. Trump believes if he makes it up, it's real. Okay? You can't manufacture evidence at the national level when I think 48 of the 50 states, and it may be 50 out of 50 now, their head person, their secretaries of state equivalent or whatever, whatever they're given a title, have all said, we've examined it and there's no fraud.
Right. Although you must admit, in some place out there in the country, you might find the occasional judge that will pull some shit.
No, you won't. They haven't, Brian, they haven't got it. I understand that's kind of.
Well, she said that they've won 2 some places.
Okay. Some 35-year-old attorney.
Oh, look, I don't agree with her at all. I mean, it was frustrating Bill Maher last night.
In a sense, Brian, you are by saying giving her more credence than she deserves. Okay, that's all I'm saying.
Right.
I put my faith in the facts, and the facts are 22 cases filed by Trump and his people, and they're 0 for 22. Now, even the states that they had something like Pennsylvania, it would not amount, even if every vote got thrown out, right, that they're contesting, it would not change any of the results.
Okay, can I please just do this
Sure.
for a second?
Sure.
I'm gonna
Go ahead. Sure. Bring her up.
Okay. It's only a minute clip, so it's not even
Go
a full
ahead.
clip.
Sure, right.
But I mean,
I
I'm
thought you
hoping that
didn't see it.
something happens here.
Why do you think so many people on the right, including people like Rupert Murdoch, Karl Rove, Erdogan, the strongman of Turkey, the Pope, China now, congratulated Biden? Why have so many people come over to this idea that, okay, America had a free and fair election, we're congratulating the new guy, that's the way it works, you win some, you'll lose some. Why?
Well, China is definitely congratulating Joe Biden because they know they can control him. Beijing Biden is something that actually really needs to be looked into.
Oh, I walked right
really
into that one,
a
didn't I?
question.
All right, good.
Yeah, you really
Okay.
did. Yeah.
All right,
so,
Jenna, you got
so
me
China
there.
congratulating Biden is not a really good thing, but
All right.
we have always had contested elections through the legal channels, through the recounts, and just because we have the Pope or somebody on media who is congratulating Joe Biden, no states have yet certified their results, and that's all that we're asking is to make sure that the results that are certified
Okay.
are the legitimate count. And I think that that is absolutely fair, and every American should agree to that.
Okay, there's obviously more.
Okay,
That's not
Brian,
really what I
Brian,
want to see.
listen, that's my first look at it. First of all,
She was obnoxious, though. That was the best she was.
Forget about it. She is a Donald Trump supporter.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
So she would say exactly what she said. President Obama, I'm echoing Brian if you changed something when I came back on. I don't know if I'm echoing, but I'm in here. Getting a double.
You'll be okay now. I had to take off. We're good.
So what happens, Brian, is this. First of all, and maybe I didn't get from you
Thank you, Human.
that she was clearly a Trump supporter. When I saw the Trump Pence, I disregard everything she says. You have to do that now. You have to do that now. That's number one. Number two, she attacks in the way, it's true. The Pope is not, as Catholics think, infallible, right? But he's not going to congratulate a president who didn't win in his mind, right? And he didn't pray to God for it. China, yeah, they want to get rid. They think they can work Biden fair. You look who hasn't congratulated him. Putin hasn't congratulated him.
Putin.
North Korea hasn't.
And Putin won't. Putin will not.
Here's the thing. Donald Trump will never concede. He will never concede. Whether he truly believes it or not, it doesn't matter. In the con job that he's running, and now he's running a long con, Brian. He's always been a con, but now it's a really long con. And the long con is, I never lost. He knows he lost.
He even said he didn't lose to Ted Cruz in the primaries in 2016.
Well, I understand all that, but what he's doing, he's not the one. He's taking those 20,000 or 10,000 or whatever came today, and they don't think he's lost. And they're the dangerous ones, okay? They're the dangerous ones in two ways. The worst thing for America is that a large number of those 70 million people say, not that, we win some, you lose some. A number of them are going to say they didn't lose, meaning their guy didn't lose. And that was, HLS was talking about kind of the cult personality, or posted about it. That's what it is. So that's one danger. And then the second danger is Trump not understanding that his words have meaning and some oomph, even though he'll be the worst president. I believe in American history. If we get one worse than him, God help us. And even if we live,
right,
or even if the country lasts 2,000 years, he doesn't realize that what he says, the people actually take him seriously, Brian. Now that's weird, isn't it? I mean, you think about it. He doesn't understand that he's the president in that sense. And he does, because it never mattered whether people took him seriously or not. They did what he wanted them to do, right? In his business. So there are people tonight all over America, I can't tell you the number, but are actually going even beyond what he said. That's not fair to Donald Trump. It's not fair to America. We got to do something about that, right? And that something involves guns.
Right.
That something involves,
and Roger Stone.
Or it involves fertilizer like Oklahoma City. That's my real fear. That they strike back at the federal government, because remember, they also think that Donald Trump is not just a victim of the Democrats, as they call us, but he's also a victim of a deep state. And they think everybody's in the deep state.
Right. But isn't that the irony? Everybody for 50 years talked about Big Brother, but who was the real Big Brother? It was business, and it was the people that support these bastards.
Well, that's what I'm saying. And look,
they're the scary ones.
Well, yeah, they are. Okay, I mean, can't say now. Another, I'm going to pick some of these that I've heard too. Not dismissing them, but just saying my message tonight and from now to January 20th, when Joe Biden, be scared of the right things. Does that make sense, Brian? In other words, there are things out there to be scared of and things to be wary of. So be scared of what could really happen and what's there. So another one is they're talking about. So I really think you can dismiss legal action. Now, another one is, and you've talked about this, we've talked about this, what they call faithless electors, right?
Right.
Now, there are states where you are not bound. Now, I'm going to use Georgia, okay, because I know this. Georgia will send 16 electors to the Electoral College. Stacey Abrams will be the leader of them, and all 15 would be Democrat. Would they in any way take Donald Trump over Joe Biden? And the answer is no. So even though that state has a law you're allowed to do it, that's not going to happen this time.
Right, and from what Hal Sparks said on John Melendez's show is that there are some law, and it wasn't just Hal Sparks. It was also Glenn Kirshner said there are specific laws. I mean, if those people can do it technically. They can switch their votes, but when they take it to the courts, that they can be held liable for what they've done, and they can be put in prison.
Correct.
So whoever does it is going to run a risk. That it makes me feel a little bit better.
I guess the best way to say it, and look, I worked for a pretty long time as a journalist, and we can't be everywhere and explain everything. But a lot of times I think we as journalists don't explain enough. Yes, it is true, right, that some states you have the right to do it. Some you can't. Some you must represent. But remember, every electoral college member that's going in a state that has statewide is a Democrat. They're not going to change their votes. Okay, they're not. It would have to be, and even if somebody does it, I think last election, I think there were two, that went for. Somebody can look that up. Actually, two who went from a state that had Hillary Clinton winning, and they gave it to Trump. I mean, it was immaterial. I mean, she wouldn't have won with that anyway. So I think.
And by the way, I guess it's a question of when they do what. If
right.
Democrats want to retaliate, they might be able to.
But I'm just saying that one. Those two, I think, are over. Okay. Now the one.
But the military too. I want to ask about the military.
I want to speak to that. Now, this is sort of like Donald Trump speaking the military. I've never served in the military either. Okay. But again, where I live, we have everyone around us from, now they're all, when I say they're ranking, that's not exactly true. We do have Fort Belvoir here. So we have some, kinds of people that would just be regular soldiers, but for the most part, they work at the Pentagon, which means, if they're a private at the Pentagon, it's still a little bit higher, maybe, in terms of what they do. And I would say I've not met one yet. It doesn't mean anything, but I've not met one yet who would betray their oath. And people miss this, their oath, because, it says the commander in chief, right? I mean, it's always been he's the commander in chief, or she someday, hopefully soon, is the commander in chief. But we've never had a person who is not commander in chief for the country. He's commander in chief for himself. We've never had that. So clearly, if you follow Donald Trump and his orders were unconstitutional or even against the norms of politics, the military will not get involved. Worst case scenario, and I don't see this happening, is X number of people desert from the military and join the militia. Now, I want to ask you if you had been in the military, right? And you were working and you saw that the military had jets, the military had tanks, and the military had nuclear bombs. They had flamethrowers. And you see a bunch of guys with 200 AK-47s. Are you going to really rush to them and fight on their side?
Right, you wouldn't.
Just for that. So, I mean, anything is possible again, but that we will not have that. Another real fear is that Donald Trump will not leave. I really hope that's true. That would be wonderful because if he doesn't leave, they will escort him out, not in chains or anything. I mean, it's not that, and that's actually happened. One time, a governor of Texas refused to leave, and they sent the Texas militia and they forced him out. Because what happens is, at this point, again, barring anything that we can't see or know, Joe Biden becomes president. But let's say for some unforeseen reason, neither one of them get to be. You know, they're tied up or whatever. Do you know who becomes president on January 20th?
I'm sorry, Dave. I had a student.
I know. I just say that. I said, just say somehow, you know, it's still locked up in something, you know, Biden and Trump. And
I guess it would be Nancy Pelosi.
You're correct. So that's it. Brian, is there anything else? I reserved one to talk about because I have 4 things I want to talk about, and it was in one of the ones. Is there anything else, either speaking from yourself or speaking from our community or speaking from your wife or speaking from others that people think we're only talking about between now and January 20th that could really either alter the election or really damage the country? Have we touched on all the ones that the ones that we've talked about? Is there anything else? Remember, I'm going to.
I can only go by what I usually Bill Maher covers most of the things, and last night he was talking about how Trump put these people in the military.
Now, do you want to know
now,
what
again, Hal Sparks thinks he's done? Hal Sparks is brilliant.
Well, here's Brian. Here's what the brilliant insiders in Washington are saying. Trump is firing people for 2 reasons, right? Those who didn't support him enough, right? So that's revenge firing. And the other thing is, and I understand this, you're saying, oh my God, he's either those civilians and they're going to control the military. They don't. The generals control the military. What they control is the military spending. Got it? So one of the
right. I heard that. You're correct.
One of the theories is he will put people in positions to do his bidding financially. For example, the Saudis, he gets a back channel through the Saudis, right, and they say, Donnie boy, listen, you sell us, 400 jets.
We'll pay your debts.
We'll, and you sell them to us for a little less, right? But I'll tell you what, you got a $400 million, deficit. You got 800 personal. We'll take care of that, and they have the money to do that. So that's really, Brian, the thinking right now in these departments. And I'll get to one in a moment, that he's putting people in there because he's running. That's the short con part of the long con. Anything else? I mean, I want to make sure that we deal.
I'm just trying to run through my head. I mean, aside from, just insurrection out there.
Now, you feel fairly good right now, right? I mean, we've dismissed a lot of serious things.
Well, I tell you what I don't feel good about. It's the general idea that, number one, he has not conceded yet. And that's still a problem, whether you like it or not.
It's not a problem.
Okay. I know, I think that Biden is talking with Mattis, but that's...
I want to... Okay.
But I'm saying, I'm still worried about people like Roger Stone and Fox News working the people in terms of perception. That's still that thing out there that...
Perception... Now, Brian, listen to what you said. I'm not arguing. They're doing it.
I'm not talking about the truth.
That's not speculation. But no matter what they do, it can't change the result.
Okay, right. I get that.
January
Okay.
20th.
Okay. Again, and then I'm going to go back into this. Understand where I've come from in terms of the Russia thing.
You're speaking for a hell of a lot of American people.
Right. All I'm telling you is that, you and I have privately discussed popular culture, and we both agree just how much that has an effect on people.
Oh, absolutely, Brian.
Right. And Trump plays a dirty game, and he does it through the media, and so does Roger Stone. I'm just worried. I think
Brian,
what bothers me so much is it's Fox, Sinclair, those two. In fact, obviously they have to worry about Trump, but I think that they can cause a lot of problems simply by putting the shit out there. That's what the Germans did.
Brian, you missed my point. Okay, my point is, I believe they will put all kinds of shit out there, but no matter what shit they put out there, it won't stop Joe Biden from being president on January 20th. Once that vote is where it is now, once there's been 20 court cases turned over, once we see that he has 306 electoral votes, he is president.
Well, he better have all the kind of protection in the world, because they'll be going after him.
Okay. Now, I was kind of hoping you would say, not that you were completely relieved, but you were relaxed, because I'm going to give you 4 things. If you think
feel slightly better.
Good. I want to change
our
that.
conversation, private conversation.
I want to get back to the Brian you want to know. All right. Number 1, 4 problems, right? Are you aware? I mean, I don't mean that like, oh, you're supposed to know.
Right.
Okay. On December 11th, the government runs out of money.
I didn't know the exact date, but I know that it will.
I'm giving you the exact date.
Okay.
So what does that mean? It means the government has no money, none. We've seen shutdowns before, and everybody rushes. But the Republicans want a different thing. Trump, the president wants a different thing. Donald Trump is already on record as saying. Now, remember, he also said he'd build a wall. He also said, I'll show you my taxes. So we never know if he's talking about what he's talking about. But in this case, I think this might be a real threat that he follows through on. Unless the Senate, the House, everybody can agree on it and the president signs it, right? The government stops funding. So it takes, kind of legislative. This is one of the times when they're kind of equal, right?
Right.
Or it takes time to come back, et cetera, et cetera. I believe he will carry through on his threat, and he will not sign anything. And why do I say that? Again, because that will get back at any government workers who didn't vote for him. And see, Donald Trump's thinking is a little bit different than other people's thinking. If I were to get back at some group, I would make sure I didn't get back at those that supported me, right? I would get back at those that didn't. He doesn't care. Scorched earth.
Right.
So he will do that. Congress does not meet if that happens. The new Congress does not meet until January 3rd. That means that in 17 days, they have to fund, but the president, they still don't, because Trump can do it. So that means when Joe Biden comes in, no matter what his priorities were or are, the first thing is to get the government open. Now, let's assume that the Republicans do have control of the Senate, and they decide to do what they did with Barack Obama. Now you say, well, Dave, that's a little speculative. It's not, and I'll tell you why. 3 different people in 3 different departments that I know who work in the government, their bosses have already said, be prepared to go December and January. December, you'll get one more check. They said, be prepared to go the whole month of January and possibly into February with no money. Well, that's pretty dangerous. Okay. Mm-hmm. There's certain things that we can't do, certain things ground to a halt. I mean, and it's not like, because I worked with the Smithsonian. I couldn't even go into the building, right? I mean, so, it's not just like, oh, we'll start up tomorrow. So that's a real thing to worry about. And I believe I'm going to switch now. I'm always the possibility guy. I'm going to say there's more probability of that happening than possibility. Now, this is something you alluded to earlier, and that's why I want to talk it down. I like the way some people are talking it down here. They're talking about a self-pardon crisis. Now, a president may pardon anyone for any crime as long as the crime was federal.
Correct.
Now, it's never been tested. Can a president pardon himself?
They say it's unlikely.
It's not illegal yet. It would be tested in the courts. And trust me, Donald Trump, again, through good sources, is asking around with that. Can I do that? So it's not something we're making up.
I would
Now-
agree with you. Yes, I'm sure
now-
he is asking.
Well, can you imagine? That's one possibility, right? Another, which I is a possibility, but I don't think will happen, on, let's pick a date. January 18th, Donald Trump resigns as president, elevates Pence pardons him, and off we go. All right, that's a possibility, right? And then you get in the worst of all worlds. He doesn't get a pardon, and then what does Joe Biden do? Now let's look at that. Most of America who hate Donald Trump want their pound of flesh because their uncle, they believe, which is, there's some truth. If it's been another president, their uncle wouldn't have died. We got all this. And Joe Biden has to look at it. What is the best, not the Gerald Ford best. Gerald Ford did the best thing, and he lost the next election. That's why he lost. That's why Jimmy Carter beat him. There are some other reasons, because enough of the people said we want Nixon to go to prison. So in one sense, you have people demanding that. More importantly, if you believe in America or the ideals of America, one of its greatest ideals is no person, even the president of the United States, is above the law. And if Donald Trump is found guilty of actions while and presidency, and then not charged or pardoned, that theory goes down, and nobody ever again should believe that. On the other side, quite real frankly, if there isn't some kind of cooperation in the next 4 years with the problems we're facing, we might get rid of the virus.
We weren't getting anything from them anyway. We know that.
I understand that. I'm not.
But it's about time the Democrats get tough with them.
Let me ask you something. Are you ready? Okay. Someone kills someone you love, right? I know I would try to kill them, right? I mean, that would be natural. But guess who else gets killed when you do that? Let's assume I did it, because I have a whole family. My wife, not kill. I mean, so Biden's kind of in that position. There's all kinds of reasons to. Now, what Joe Biden will do, this is a guess. Number one, if it's the state of New York or a non-federal agency, he won't do a thing. Trump will, be charged and served. If it is a federal government, Joe Biden has already said he will not interfere. Trump interfered every day. He will not interfere with the Justice Department's findings. So Doug Jones, there's a possibility Doug Jones will be Attorney General from Alabama. That's one of the things. So if Doug Jones comes into Biden and says, we got him, but these are the charges, Biden will say, you go with them. So I don't think the pardon is going to happen, but it is there. I'm more concerned with the self-pardon. Okay? Now, Trump has 70 million Americans that like him, right?
73 now.
Well,
73.
okay.
78 to 73. Biden.
78 to 73. All right, so let's give them their full due. They want Donald Trump. Well, first of all, they don't want Donald Trump charged with anything because they don't believe he committed a crime.
Right. And you know what? I'll bet you. I mean, my guess is, and this is the same thing with Russia, is that of those 73, I bet you there are probably 40 or 50 million who actually know the truth and say, yeah, I know he's cheating, but I don't give a shit anyway. In other words,
all that, Brian. Look, I know people play that game, and
everybody fucking knows.
People.
Except for the dumbest.
I tried it too. I was looking at why would you vote for Donald Trump, and is this one worse than that one? No, you are not an American if you voted for Donald Trump. End of story.
Right. That's it. It's just it's so clear.
I don't care. You are not an American. I'm sorry. Go your other way. So we've got two. So I'm saying, I'll just review. You've got a government that comes to a halt. I think that's a probability. I think Trump will try some kind of pardon. And if it gets to the courts, that just ties it up again, right?
Well, wouldn't you say, Dave, that he'll probably just try everything that he can?
Well, yeah, but some of it isn't going to succeed. Those two could. Right? Now, here's one that not very many people are talking about, but some people are. And I think this is very, very, hey, Tammy, I think this is very, very likely. Right now, he probably is holding on to some faint hope that he will still be president. All right. And that will end as soon as it's officially certified. And on that day, it would not surprise me if he leaves the White House and goes to Mar-a-Lago and never returns. And you know what happens? His Mar-a-Lago enterprise gets more than a couple $1 million a day from the government operations that have to come down there and take care of him. This is the thing about the emoluments clause that nobody figured. Look, every time he goes, and it's not about people going there. I mean, the apparatus of government has to go there. All right. 250, sometimes 250, 300 reporters will cover him, right? They all have to eat. They eat there. I mean, so that's something he definitely could do. Not illegal, right? But like, say, I'm making this up, but say if every $5 spent there, he himself will get 3, even though it's being spent on the president of the United States. Okay. And the last one we've talked about a lot that I see happening, the witch hunt, legal abuses, all that kinds of things he will do. And that's not changing the election. It's just creating chaos. Now, people might ask, and nobody knows, why is he creating this chaos? At first, yeah, there was a possibility he does not want to be president again. I think he's actually in his mind, he realizes that. What he wants to do is this, Brian, and I will say I was completely wrong if this doesn't happen. I believe he's not going to be president. I believe he believes he's not going to be president, but he's already working on another plan. And that plan is this. He will continue to sow seeds of discord. He will claim that the election was stolen for him. He will leave and say, you know what? That was taken from me, but I'm a fighter. And he will spend 4 years fighting to return in 2024. And unfortunately, he still has the title, kind of being the president is always leader of the party. We've never quite had this, right? Where normally they just fade off. But he's not going to fade off into the sunset. Now, your good friend and my good friend Jim Crilly, who is a Republican, one of the first to say Donald Trump was a schmuck. I give him all that. He doesn't believe that's true. He believes that Trump will just disappear, not in the woodwork, but do something else. I don't agree with that. He needs that adoration. I assume, Brian, you're not a junkie, right? A drug user, that much ever in your life, correct?
Definitely not a junkie. I've had pot.
Oh, no, I know that. That's not what we're saying.
I've had a lot more grape soda than I've had pot.
Well, that's not about you, Brian. It's about the thing I'm talking. If you're a junkie, you know how much junk is enough? It's never enough, all right? Donald Trump is a adoration junkie. He never had those kind of rallies as a businessman. Never. And now that's more of a need to him than money. So how does he get it? He continues to run. He is going to go out, Brian. I don't know how many he'll get in, but he will have at least 4 to 6 huge rallies between now and January 20th.
Right. By the way, it's an interesting side note.
Yeah.
You're talking about money and how he generates it. Again, I keep talking about Hal Sparks, but
Right.
he was mentioning how and I knew about the sale of the West Palm real estate to the Russians. These oligarchs were paying twice the amount of money, so it was obvious that they were laundering money. Trump is laundering money, so he's laundering money for the Russians in southern Florida. But the thing that was interesting about what Sparks said was that when Giuliani got rid of the Italian mafia in New York, essentially, mainly out. He really cut down their power.
You're
what is the mob that he brought in?
Well,
it was
I'll
the
tell you,
Russian mob, and that controls. The New York mob scene is the Russian mob.
If anybody doesn't believe that, right? When the virus is over, take a walk down Jewelers Row in New York City. There's only one language spoken there, Russian. That's it. They've moved out the Italians. They've moved out the Jewish money. It is all about Russian money. You're absolutely right, Brian. And that's something we haven't talked about. And I choose not because a wild card in all this is, what is Putin thinking and what is Putin going to do? And we don't know. Okay. We know that he wants we know that he wants one thing. He wants America in discord. So he's succeeded beyond his wildest dreams in that. We could be pretty sure that he'd rather have Donald Trump as president than Joe Biden. But that ship has sailed for him.
Right. Now they also said there was a problem too, Dave. With New York, they can really go after Trump in New York, and with the Russian thing. But they said that part of the problem is that when they take him out, there's going to be a lot of other people involved in New York real estate, and then it got out of control. So that's why they've been laying off. Now I don't know, the ins and out of that, but I do know the Russian mob is really.
No, I mean I don't know. Well, the other thing
is
New
York,
and this upset me, but I understand it. There's a feeling, again, when I say in Washington, D.C., I mean, that's just because it's a hub here. There's a feeling that if Donald Trump somehow could pay back on his tax, his tax fraud, say even 75% of that money, that they might not charge him simply because they want the money back because he stole from the taxpayers, right? And it would be better. I mean, it seriously would be better to get millions of dollars to help the government. I mean, to help the poor people. Theoretically, it doesn't get to the poor people, but it could. So some of these things, I guess I'm saying we've got all that going on. That some of it we know, some of it we don't. But what we do know, I think, is this. I wish, anyone who thinks that it is going to be better today than it will be tomorrow, I think is a little either too hopeful, somewhat too naive. But anyone who thinks there's not going to be change on January 20th is too pessimistic. So the real question is this, Brian: how much damage? And I'm not asking you to answer this. We all have to ask ourselves, and it doesn't matter. We have to have personal answers. How much damage can a wounded Donald Trump do? Wounded in both senses. He doesn't have the power he had before, but he still has the power of the presidency, right? But he also is angry and mad and will take everything down around him.
Can you even believe that we're saying all this? This is how bad things are. It's that bad. I mean, normally this would be something just unheard of. Like he's going to burn the whole place down.
What really is unheard of is our guy won, right? Our guy won. Good won. Everything won, and we're still working to keep the bad. You know what I mean? I mean, we can't celebrate the good. I told people down here, I'm laughing, but I was kind of serious. Party your ass off for 24 hours and then get right back. Right. Because it's going to get worse. And that's where we are. Another thing I want to address tonight, and ladies and gentlemen, you get bored with me saying this, but I really believe this is true. If you want America to be America and you believe Joe Biden has a shot to make America America, you have to take every dollar, every single dollar that you can spare, right? Yep. If it's $1, it's $1. If it's $2 million, it's $2 million, and send it to the Democratic organization in Georgia, because the Senate right now stands at 50 Republicans and 48 Democrats.
Well, hold it. Again, this is the genius of Hal Sparks. Sparks says we really only have to win one because there's an independent who generally will vote with the Democrats.
That is not true. Sparks is wrong, because that 48 includes there are two independents.
Oh, really?
One of them is Bernie Sanders.
You're saying they're inside the.
They're already there. They're already inside the 48. Right.
He said we didn't need one.
Well, I'm sorry. I know you're very impressed with Mr. Sparks, and I understand and all that. I'm telling you, unless he knows something that I don't know, I mean, he could, but the number is clear because there are two independents, so he's not wrong about that, but they're already wrapped into that Democratic number. Because what happens, Brian, you cannot, you can get elected as an independent, right? But because there aren't enough of you, you can't, what they call caucus. You can't, you would just be able to. So you choose a party. And in this case, both the independents have chosen the Democratic Party.
Let's keep going with that.
Now, the two races are extremely interesting to me, and it should be to everybody. One is David Perdue, not to be confused for Frank Perdue, the chicken man. David Perdue is human Southern horse manure, and that's an insult to horse manure. He's everything you've ever heard about a corrupt, bad Southern politician. That's him from Georgia. Jon Ossoff is everything you would want in an up-and-coming young politician. So you've got a very stark contrast, almost like you had with Biden and Trump. Georgia, man, I would take it to the bank that a Republican win. Not anymore. Right? So the good thing is that Biden did kind of the impossible, right? And won Georgia. Most people didn't expect that yet. I thought they were another election cycle away. Atlanta is going to eventually control Georgia, the size of it, but they're there. The bad thing is you got history working against you, right? In all, the vote drop off, even in an election like this, is so tremendous when the president isn't running, right? The other counter product on the other side, on our side, is Stacey Abrams is probably will go down as one of the best organizers, ever. And she's there. Right as of the other day, when they entered the race, Perdue, I'm pretty sure I'm right these numbers. Perdue had 34 million in his war chest, and John Ossoff had 2. Right? Kind of the reverse, but that'll catch up. People are just got to get there. So that's the one race. And, if there were justice, not because he's a Democrat and not because Perdue is a Republican, but Perdue is everything bad about a politician, and John Ossoff is everything good. Except he hasn't.
Right. I mean, it's obvious. Like this son of a bitch in Alabama.
We'll get to that. We'll get to that in a moment. The other race is just as interesting. You have Kelly Loeffler running against a black minister. Now, the black minister has no political kind of background, but neither did Donald Trump. So it really comes down: what do you vote for in Georgia? A black man or a white woman? So we'll see how that plays out. But the thing is, it really is, like for example, say somebody says, well, I'm not voting for, I'm not giving money to Mr. Hebert. I'm giving it all to Ossoff. It doesn't matter. They both have to win. Right. If one wins and the other one doesn't, it's over. And then people raise their hand. And, a lot of people don't understand government. They're not stupid. They say, wait a minute, 50-50, that's a tie. It is not. The vice president, whomever that is, when a vote is 50-50, the vice president gets.
Right.
Now we can sit all day.
Can you imagine Kamala Harris, having this deciding vote? You think what these racists would be thinking? Oh my God.
Well, that may, if you're sophisticated in the South, don't think there aren't ads out there saying just that. They again, Republicans don't stop. There's no lines for them. So they'll actually come out and say, do you want that black woman making any decisions? Well, here's the way you don't vote for the 2 whites.
And they're not saying black, that too.
Well, they are in their ads. Okay.
Oh, in their ads, right.
Privately, they're not. And that's another thing. Now, one thing we're going to jump back, because I want to get into that. The other thing we jump back is everybody except the Republicans are horrified that Donald Trump is doing everything to make this transition awkward for the Biden team. Biden should right now have access to about 25 departments, records and stuff and he has none. Okay. Because Trump, again, doesn't understand the government. But before we get all upset about that, it's just Trump being Trump. Think about this, Brian. Joe Biden wasn't the president, but he was in the White House for 8 years. Trump was only there 4. Trump probably hasn't found all the bathrooms in there. Joe knows where they are. That's one thing. Now, the one that is scariest, maybe for that, is he's not getting the security briefings. And pretty much throughout history, especially after during the Cold War and forward, because of the inherent dangers of nuclear things and the tensions in the world, that's the first thing you get. The day you win, they still have the president, but Kamala Harris was a ranking senator on the National Security Committee. So she knows more about it than Donald Trump does because he didn't read the briefings. So what I'm saying is something that Donald Trump said, I'm showing them. Well, if it were 2 other people, maybe. But it's still wrong. And I'll say this about Donald Trump. Donald Trump was born wrong. He will live wrong and he will die wrong. I assume maybe I don't think he was born evil, but I'm going to make a guess that by age 5, he was a pretty bad 5-year-old.
Yes, indeed.
It went downhill from there. But again, I'm going to come back tonight and every night saying, I'm not going to lose sleep over it. I'm not going to be sad over it. I don't know what I'm going to be over it. But the fact that 75, you're saying, or 73, what is it? 73, you said? What's the number now? It's up to
78
Trump,
to 73.
73 million. 73 million people who call themselves Americans voted for Donald Trump. And that's the fact. When you cut all the other stuff, they're not going anywhere. They're not going to change unless they die, right? And so, people say, well, they'll die more. Well, look, I really didn't believe this. I said it on numerous occasions. I said Trump cannot exceed the votes he got last time, right? And he did. So that means his power has increased. Mm-hmm. Now, he would not have been president were it not for The Apprentice. He would not have been president if America wasn't filled with hatred and fear. But he was on The Apprentice, and America is filled with hatred and fear. You really want to lose sleep tonight? The best minds are saying, how when the hurricane of the century hits, they say, oh, we're done. No, the best minds say there'll be one that'll make that one look, and they start working for that. So really the best minds are saying there will be another Donald Trump. But here's what it'll be. Donald Trump will be intelligent. He'll be flawless. He'll be, it's not going to be the Antichrist.
I guess that means someone like Putin, actually.
Right, exactly. Okay, yeah. Exactly. With popular support, who pushes the right buttons, doesn't say I grab women's pussies. Right. Smooth, sharp.
Putin, it's it.
And if we fell for Donald Trump, and we did as a country, you didn't, I didn't, the people who watch our show didn't, the people who voted against us didn't, but 75 million Americans did. Think about what somebody who could get another 10 million Americans to support them could do, right? And we don't know what the next issues will be. I mean, we know environment, we know race. And it's not because it happened to me, but it happened to everybody. That thing tonight, standing, not bothering anybody, me, and certainly I bother people. Okay, so I'm not saying, but at that point, for someone who doesn't know me, because we have concealed carry here in Virginia, right? We actually have open carry in some places. I could have a gun, right? So he said, just to say it again, he felt compelled as he walked across a parking lot to look at me with a Black Lives Matter mask on and say, again, I ain't nothing more gay than a white man wearing a Black Lives Matter mask. And I went into it if you were anybody's
Where do you think he was from?
What?
Where do you think
he was from the area? There's no question, because he was walking. So he was, I say there's nobody here. He wasn't homeless. I mean, you don't walk. I mean, he wasn't walking to his car. I didn't follow him. I followed him. So he was walking down to another apartment building or house away from us. My point is, that's pretty damn, well, let's put it like this. It's pretty brazen to do, but he's just seething. If he had to say that, right? I'm not excusing him. Right. I'm just saying he was willing to risk me having a gun, right? Now, the odds are I didn't if I was wearing a Black Lives, but maybe I would. Maybe I just come from there. You know what I mean? So this kind of hatred and stupidity and ignorance is not going anywhere. I wish Joe Biden very well in the sense that he is conciliatory. I think Joe Biden will learn his lesson very quickly. But if Joe Biden could concede or could somehow work a magical thing that reached across the aisle and began to see some Democrats and Republicans working together, that would mitigate some of the disease out there, and it would build us up. Now, I don't see it happening.
Well, I think the only way that you're going to take down the Republican Party in any kind of way is they have to have a fissure, a divide in some way to bifurcate that.
Well, that's the hope.
I don't know how you do that, but it might start with the Fox thing, something like that.
Well, think about this. It could well do that. All right. Fox was the big people's, okay, on the bad side. And Trump kissed, and they kissed. But as soon as they started to be a news organization, Donald Trump doesn't understand news. To him, news organizations are only reputable if they praise him. That's unbelievable, but that's what he does. So he looked and he looked and he looked. I believe it's called Newsmax is the new one.
Right.
If I had to say who's he going to sign with, he's going to sign with them. Couple reasons. Number one, they are fourth in line, right? Remember how the old, what was it? Avis and Hertz, Avis was number two. We Try Harder. Well, Newsmax is number four. From what I understand, they have quite a bit of funding behind them, though. And so it's kind of Trump's advantage because he can leap all the way over Fox, right? It's certainly the Newsmax's advantage because they can come out of nowhere and be number one. Trump did want initially, he does want, he really doesn't have any other pulpit. He can't be Rush Limbaugh because Rush Limbaugh relies a lot on radio. Trump will have radio, but Trump's a TV guy. So Trump, if I had to bet, as they say, Trump is already coming to grips with the idea. He won't leave. I said today to someone, he won't leave the White House until 11:59, right? He'll push it to the very end. And then he'll leave. Or he may, Brian, he may actually, can you imagine if he refuses to leave and has to be escorted out?
And I said that kind of thing. My father's ship in World War II, that actually happened, and they had to drag the captain off the ship.
And that goes nationwide to his supporters. And as he walks out, he'll probably be screaming, but he just turns and says, "I told you this was what has happened. I was the elected president, and now they have me." If they had him in handcuffs, whatever. So, if I were advising him, I might tell him to do that. If I were on his side,
whatever it is, it's gonna. Well, as you said, he's stupid, so he may. Who knows what he'll do?
But see, I'm revising that. I've said it along, but I'm going to go out thinking this: Donald Trump is the best con man in the history of America. Donald Trump is the best con man in the history of America. To get 75 million people to vote for him after the 4 years of performance that he demonstrated. So I think a con man is more dangerous maybe if they're smart, but sometimes they're a better con man because sometimes smart, if you're conning the rubes, right, you want to think a little bit about them. I even wonder sometimes now, and I've heard it back and forth, and I've gone back and forth, maybe he lowers his speaking a little bit to be more in common with them, like those tweets. Look, those tweets are bad grammatically. They're bad every way you know. And I'm sorry. He did go to Wharton. That doesn't make you a genius. But he knows the English language a little bit better than that. And go back and listen, if you haven't, and I've done it, go back and listen to his business talks 10, 12 years ago, right? Even as recently as, before he ran. So I don't know that, but I'm kind of wondering if Steve Miller, Bannon, somebody smart said, Donnie, play down. Play down. I know you're bright.
Not
That's
fair.
all that matters.
Two words in caps. Not fair. All crap.
Or whatever. Now, again, I'm going to close with this story tonight. And then you can have the rest of the show. But this is a reporter for Vanity Fair that I believe is one of the best in the business. And the reason she's the best in the business, she gets the best sources, and she doesn't write anything unless it's triply sourced, right? So Marianne Nunzias, she wrote a story this week, and I believe it to be true. And I said, wait a minute, believe no. You can't prove it because it's not, the tape, it doesn't exist. But there's enough proof out there to see the logic of the story. If the first tweet that Trump really sent, you just said the all caps, that's what made me think about it. Stop the count, right? That was his mantra. Stop the count. The people in the White House said, oh my God, does he understand? Does he know what he's doing? Nobody wants to say anything to him, right? But apparently they got to him And the next day, the cover in the White House, which you can see, was no, he didn't mean stop counting all the votes. He meant stop counting the illegal votes. Well, there were no illegal votes, but that isn't what he said. He said stop the count, right? Then Nunzio gets the real story. If this is true, I believe it is. That it took an hour, Brian, in a closed room. I don't know who was in the room. I don't know. It was Jared, Ivanka, Pomp. I mean, I don't know who was in there, but more than one person was in that room. And it took them an hour to show him that if you stop the count while you were behind, that was not a good thing. Now, does that mean he's stupid? No, it means he doesn't understand politics, right? And I think that should be the theme. Well, yeah, well, he understands. Well, he certainly doesn't have a great understanding if you're bankrupt. No, forget over and above his moral failings, over and above his defects in character. He's another thing that he did that ensured that even if he had those, he would have been a failure. He never was able to understand that there's a difference between being a CEO of a business and the president of the United States. As CEO, and you've said this a lot, and you're right. You've said, but he's never lost, but he's never lost, but he's never lost. And that is well true in business. Or if he has, he redefines losing, right? But he never had a board of directors as powerful as the citizens of the United States.
Right. We were the only thing that stopped him. I mean, he really got off with the impeachment. He got off with all the Russian. Yes, he got off with everything. But he didn't get away with us.
We stopped him. America stopped
it.
The voters. Certainly not the Republican Party.
Jim Jordan couldn't stop us.
Certainly not the Supreme Court. And so take that with some joy tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, worry about the numbers. Worry about, Trump lives another day. Don't worry about Joe Biden not being president. Worry about what Donald Trump can do to the country before Joe Biden becomes president. But understand that this is one of those times, Brian, when clear good, and it's pretty easy to be good this time. All you had to do to be good was be opposed to Donald Trump, beat pure evil. No guarantee it'll happen tomorrow. It all starts over tomorrow. And that's another thing that I think I understand this, but people really wanted to have this joy. They really want it to be over. And Brian, the coronavirus isn't over. Trump isn't over. And the one that you started on initially that is more frightening than all of them, and I stay away from it because it's the biggest one of all. And I think we did a tremendous service to the environment by getting rid of Donald Trump. And I knew we could do that, is the environment. That's the one that everyone, should be, because that kills us, right? Our pandemic kills us. But the scary thing about the environment is we can lead, but it's going to take a lot of countries in the world. So Trump is not going to be president, ladies and gentlemen, January 20th. It's going to be bad. So look around, hug your kids, hold your family close. Don't bring them in if they don't live in your house. HLS said 6 people. That's pretty good. Zoom, do that. Know that the family's there. Don't read the books that Brian reads. If you do, Brian, do you realize tonight, for the first time, think about this. For the first time since I've known you, you and Donald Trump now share something in common. You both held an important book upside down.
Yeah. Well, actually, it was mirrored in the wrong
Thanks,
way.
Brian. You got the closing.
Thank you, Dave.
Right. I'm going to sit here and listen to you.
All right.
Ladies and gentlemen, I
forgot Brian what show I was on.
He was terrible tonight as a technician. But I'll tell you this. No. When Brian Weinstein says something, there are 3 things that you know. He has thought about it. He believes it honestly. And thirdly, he will stick by it. Not in the sense of holding on, but I'm just saying that's the Brian I know. Now, if I could find, if anybody has at home Bobo the Wonder Chimp or Johnny the Porny Monkey that was in Borat, I would prefer them to be my technician. But when it comes to Brian, yeah, you got the real deal there, people. And you should be thankful, not thankful like down on your knees, but if it weren't for Brian, we would not have this show. And some of you said, oh my God, that would be great. I wouldn't hear Dave Price. But if you think this show is helpful, all credit
All
goes
right.
to Brian.
Okay. David, thank you for joining me tonight. And it was touch and go for a while, but we finally got it back on. We don't give up, and that's the bottom line. So, okay. So in any case, folks, I'm going to end where I began, and we did have a really tough time coming on, and we hope that this won't happen again. I think it has to do with Big Sur, the new operating system for Mac, and we had a tough time. But this was a book by Vladimir Post. I'm not here to talk about that, but I am thinking that the title, Parting with Illusions, is really important for us Americans, especially the Americans who voted against Trump. If there was any illusion out there that somehow the Republicans would, play fair at any point in time, the last, going back to 2000 at least, we kind of felt it when you had Bush versus Gore. But I think we have to part with the illusion about the country itself, and that we are not united. We are divided. And I think that in the end, and this is just my personal perspective, that we shouldn't give in. We shouldn't give in at all, especially when the other side is there's such a problem. Dave and I have discussed this issue, and at some point in time we'll talk about the reasons why these people do these things. But we don't want to go into it now. But the point is that this country is essentially two countries right now, and I don't know that you actually want to get back. And I know David agrees with me on that, and he's right that after the dust settles, the dust will be right back up, and it makes me angry, and it makes me think about my future. And actually, David mentioned the same thing about 6 or 7 hours ago, that we're older, and we're never going to see this thing come back to where it was. Never. Just like the climate, it's not coming back, and it's really tough because we've already seen. I mean, I'm sure all of you have seen somebody pass in the last year or two, and they didn't like Trump, and they're gone. They never got to see him lose. But this is tough business life, and it's getting tougher and tougher in this country because of the divide. And I think in the end, like any other country that has had this kind of thing happen, you can't give into it. I mean, you really cannot unite the country because they're just so bad right now. This is so wrong. It's so obvious that they're wrong, whether they're stupid or they simply are evil. It doesn't matter. The point is, we can't give in. Now, how do we go from there? My opinion is, Joe Biden better figure it out, and he has to do it through other people, and hopefully he'll do that. If he doesn't, I'll be pissed as hell, just like my wife was upset today. The idea that he might pardon Trump. Now, I don't think it's going to happen, as David said. Biden himself said that he wouldn't get involved in any kind of presidential pardons. But in any case, again, we all should part with the illusions, no matter what happens, no matter how excited we are that this country's divided. Your next door neighbor's divided from you. You won't even want to look at him when he gets the mail. And you're right. It's called Divided We Stand for a reason. And I didn't like using that. I hate that expression, except for that one song by Steve Morse, Divided We Stand, in the Dixie Dregs. I love that song. But that's beside the point. The point is that divided we stand. And I want to say how much I appreciate the people who have become members of Divided We Stand. We are private now. It's a little bit easier to police the group. We had infiltrators causing kind of all kinds of problems for us. But please, if you know people of like mind, have them subscribe to our page, our private group on Facebook. We do have a YouTube channel, and some of you are watching on YouTube. We only have 50 some subscribers. We haven't concentrated at all on the YouTube page, but at some point we may do that. But we're going where, we're having our audience, and that's where we want to focus on Facebook. But you can still find us on YouTube, and if you are watching on YouTube, subscribe, because we want to at some point connect all of them. And we have 5 different platforms, but for all intents and purposes, it's just on Facebook. So again, divided we stand. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. And we don't ask for a penny. We don't want anything from you. We just want to air it out. So thank you very much. Human, by the way, thanks again for popping up. And also I see Anthony has arrived. These are the folks that go way back to the Reality Report, and I appreciate that.
And Human, I have a goal for 2021.
What's that? Is that a ghost in the wires here?
Yes, it is. This is going out to one person. This is going out to HLS. I might go on a hunger strike, and anybody who knows me says that's not something that could happen unless HLS does at least one show, because every week he comes up with some good stuff. Right. And I'll even bow out that night, or whatever it takes to get you on, HLS. So be prepared.
Were you on any other shows? I don't know whether you were on Sandy's show ever or not, or are you pretty much working through the chats? I mean, I can't really remember. I know we had discussed a lot of things on the Reality Report before, the last 3 years, but have you been on any of the shows? I mean,
what about Brian? I just thought about this. What if he really doesn't exist? He's like an
Nice.
AI bot, but really intelligent and really smart.
Oh, we have people like that who do that kind of thing. He mentioned the regular schedule. We're trying to have a regular schedule at 8:00, and then we have plans for after the 1st of December. We've got some ideas.
We're going to hold those plans.
Right.
We do have. I will say this, since I'm the change guy. We have plans, but I think everyone will agree that it makes what we're doing better. And remember, in order to succeed, in order just to go forward, you have to have some changes. So we will be making some changes, but they're going to be positive, and they won't really involve any individuals as such. It'll be more opportunities for more things rather than less.
Right. That's basic, but it'll be better. It'll be better. We're trying to get better. I mean, and if it doesn't, we'll keep trying.
Well, we would get a lot better if we get somebody who knew what the hell they were doing technically. Oh, sorry. Right,
okay, he's playing. Now, and understand, folks, when you change your operating system, all kinds of shit happens.
Oh, no,
all kinds of shit. I mean, he's right. I mean, Dave, you mentioned it. Here he goes. Look at this guy.
Play the outro.
Let me get this guy. Okay, in a second. The problem is that it's the third-party software that has a conflict with Big Sur, and that's the problem. So, all right. Rip Van Winkle's back. Okay. All right, let's get something on. Enjoy the story. I see. Now I'm having problems with Big Sur. Here we go.
It was a hot summer's day in the middle of the Sahara. All the tribes was packing up to head out yonder, to hang out in a spot that wasn't as hot as the last parking lot that was just as hot. At the watering hole at the palm tree oasis is where the camels would go to stuff their faces with H2O for their singular humps, for the long trip ahead over the vast triumph. But old Gritty Two Humps was a gluttonous llama, while everybody slumbered pre-exodus. Overweight her humps with precious water, survival goods, mega stacked, made her sink into the while the camels rolled across the sandy sea. But Greedy G was loaded down heavy, wobbly at the knees. Greedy Two Humps. Taken up the slack, it fell into a slump. With the sun relentless and hot on her back, her distance receded and she fell way back. But the 1-2 hump camels who travel light left 2 humps behind, clear out of sight. Her greedy 2 humps, filled and heavy as lead, the herd had moved on and she was left for dead. The cackles of jackals that wore a faint sound began to get closer and gather round. And hyena laughter, always a bad sign, were now closing in on 2 humps behind. The buzzards that circle began to descend on 2 humps, the llama that sat in the sin. She became the feed for those in need. Survival goods, mega stacked,